Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one of the premium tier upper receivers. This is the Griffin Armament Mark 1. This is a 11.5.556 upper receiver. Now, full disclosure on the Griffin Armament Mark 1, they did send this out to me for free to review, so I did not pay for this whatsoever, so keep that in mind. Now, on top of that, there was some discussion of doing some suppressor testing for them as well via being a W-2 employee with a LOA, a letter of authorization. However, as of this point, I don't think that's going to go anywhere, but you guys should be aware that that conversation did take place. Now, the reason that they reached out to me is because one of you kind gentlemen actually reached out to them and bugged them enough to get in contact with me and send me something to review. So not only did they send me the upper receiver here, this is again the Griffin Armament Mark 1, but they also sent me one of their suppressor adapters, one of their suppressor hub adapters, so that my Turbo K could fit onto one of their muzzle devices. Now, we will definitely talk about the suppressor mount and adapter a little bit later on, but for right now, we're going to focus on the more important components, like the barrel system. Now, they call their barrel system the HEDP, the High Endurance Dual Purpose Barrel System. Again, this one here is an 11.5 416R stainless steel, 1-in-8 twist, black nitride finish. Now, getting into the profile that they went with on here, this is basically an M4A1 SOCOM profile, which is a bit of a heavier profile, meaning the barrel by itself comes in at just over 25 ounces, meaning that it's anywhere from 2 to 5 ounces heavier than a comparable barrel from another manufacturer using a little bit of a slimmer profile. Now, as far as the rest of the barrel goes in the back, we of course have polished M4 feed ramps, very nice. The rifling on the inside, as I mentioned, is 1-in-8 twist, but it's also 5R rifled. Now, 5R rifling does have some advantages over more traditional lands and grooves. You generally get less deformation on the bullet. You get a tighter gas seal as well, meaning that in theory, you're gonna get a little bit better accuracy and possibly a little bit better velocity as well. Though again, that's going to vary quite a bit between ammunitions, barrel types, so on and so forth. Now, this is of course a 11.5 barrel with a carbine length gas system. They claim on their website that these are suppressor optimized gas port sizes. And they're really not. The actual gas port size on this is somewhere between 0.072 and 0.073. My 0.073 gauge didn't quite fit all the way through, though it is to the plus side versus to the minus side. So again, it's around 0.072, maybe a hair larger than that. Now, for comparison, a Geisley 11.5 carbine length gas system is going to be 0.068, 0.069, so a little bit smaller. Now, if you watch my previous video on the Gun.Deals channel on this upper receiver, I did remark that it was very, very soft shooting, and that has more to do with the fact that the gas block doesn't have that great of a seal to the barrel itself. It's fine, but you are losing a little bit of gas around the gas block itself, and at this point, we have somewhere between 12 and 1,500 rounds on the system, so hopefully that would tighten up and seal up a little bit, but it's still just a little bit loose, as you guys can probably tell by me taking it off incredibly easily. Now, talking about the gas block installation, this is one of those things that they did extremely well. Even though the fit isn't as good as I would like to the barrel, it is a double dimpled barrel, which is extremely rare. And on top of that, it has a solid steel roll pin that holds the gas block in place. Now, as far as the actual installation goes, there is no like rock set or high temperature thread locker on the threads on the gas block itself. One of them had a little bit of torque on it, and the one in the back had a lot more torque on it. So the torque values were not consistent on the gas block, though again, it is double dimpled and pinned, so you have a lot of redundancies there. So overall, as far as the design goes, fantastic. Whoever assembled this one here just didn't quite put enough torque or the similar level of torque, or it loosened up, something like that, on the front gas block set screw. Now, when I reinstalled the gas block, I actually added some high temperature thread locker, and I think I did 25 inch-pounds on these ones, because these gas block set screws are actually a little bit thinner. Again, pinned, double dimpled, perfect as far as design goes. The assembly could just use a little bit of a tweak. Now, without a suppressor on it, with just carbine springs and buffers in the back end, it's ejecting 55 grain 223 at about 3 to 330, which is perfectly fine for kind of mediocre power ammunition. However, with a suppressor on there, it is definitely overdriven, ejecting somewhere between 130 and 2 o'clock, even with an H3 buffer. So while the gassing is not the worst I've seen, it's not really what I would consider to be in the overgassed territory for unsuppressed shooting. For suppressed shooting, it is definitely not suppressor optimized. And again, some other 11.5s on the market, in fact, most other 11.5s on the market, especially in this price bracket, are going to have a little bit of a smaller gas port size and be a little bit softer shooting, both unsuppressed and suppressed. Now, another trade-off of a barrel system like this is that you are going to be getting a reduced barrel life. Now, when you compare it to 4140 or 4150, in general, you can expect about half the barrel life from 416R stainless steel. Now, I've heard reports that you can bump that up quite a bit with a really high quality steel, really high quality nitride coating. You can gain some of that barrel life back while retaining your accuracy advantage. However, you are never going to bridge that gap between a similarly high quality 4150 barrel with a similarly high quality coating. It's just not going to happen. The trade-off there is that you are hoping to get enhanced accuracy. 416R stainless steel does in general have very good accuracy characteristics, and so maybe hopefully you're averaging maybe 0.1, 0.25 MOA better over a wide variety of ammunition. Now, again, the name of this barrel system is the HEDP, High Endurance Dual Purpose. Now, I would call it the MELP system, the Medium Endurance Limited Purpose Roll, because again, it is a 11.5 heavy barrel. Probably not going to suit everybody's fancy, and I certainly wouldn't call it high endurance when you have cold hammer forged 4140, 4150 chrome lined barrels floating around. So in the grand scheme of things, I probably wouldn't consider this a very high endurance setup in general. Now, for those of you who don't know, Griffin Armament is probably most well known for their suppressors. A lot of extremely high quality duty grade suppressors, very, very hard to use cans that they make, multiple military law enforcement contracts, so on and so forth. So I am a little bit surprised that the barrel is not more optimized for suppressor shooting, and it isn't actually a little bit more durable. Again, a better barrel steel, maybe chrome line, something like that. But again, they are focusing on the accuracy potential out of a very short, very rigid system. Another benefit of having a rigid system barrel, a heavier SOCOM profile barrel, is that in theory, you are going to be getting less point of impact shift, less heat dispersion with suppressor use, so on and so forth, because of course it is a more rigid barrel. Now, getting into the BCG that they include in their Mark 1 upper receivers, it's not really anything special. So we have a 9310 bolt that is MPI tested, all good there. It is a complete nitride system, though they also do offer it in a Carpenter 158 bolt and also a more traditional phosphate chrome. Now, you can talk the trade-offs there. In general, nitride is a perfectly fine coating. I don't have any issues with it. It does tend to be very lubricious, heat resistant, so on and so forth, and it actually does penetrate into the material, which is good. So even if it's worn off the surface, which at this point it has worn in quite a few places, the wear isn't what I would consider to be excessive, but there is quite a bit of it. Now, you do have a lot of wear on the bolt lugs themselves. On the back, there is some material missing as well, and most of the finish is wearing away on the front of the bolt, the rails, the cam pin. It really is a very basic BCG. Now, the wear on it is not what I would consider to be excessive, but it is a little bit more than I've seen from other BCGs that were not quite as expensive. Again, it is just a very basic BCG. You have an 8620 carrier, I believe a 4130 key, grade 8 fasteners that are properly staked to mil spec. No problems there. As far as the gas seal goes from the factory, it was very, very good. After about 12 to 1500 rounds, it almost wants to open up. It is almost there to where it will open on its own, which is of course a bad sign and means that the gas rings probably need to be replaced. Though again, I have not treated this kindly whatsoever, and I only ever added lubrication once. Now, getting into the handguard that comes on the build, this is the Low Pro Rigid, the 10.5-inch version, so it comes almost right up to the back of the threads on the 11.5 barrel, and it is also almost excellent. So the rail itself is, I believe, 6061 T6 aluminum, all fine there. The rail by itself only weighs 7.5 ounces, which is extremely light. With the 7075 barrel nut that is included, it comes in at 9.3 ounces, something like that. So it is an extremely light system. Now, on top of that, when you take the rail off, you can actually see on the inside that they have reinforcement ridges all the way up and down the rail. I believe there's 7 or 8 of them. And what that does will increase the rigidity of the rail by having those reinforcements on the inside. Now, because the reinforcements are on the inside, it also means that the exterior gets to be nice and low profile. Now, it also includes these very nice grip panels on them. You, of course, have one on each side, one on the bottom with a little bit of a hand stop. As they came from the factory, they were fantastic. I didn't need to change anything on them. They are grippy, they're textured. I like them quite a bit. They do add a couple ounces, which takes your handguard weight from 9.3 to 11.2 or something like that, if you want to keep them on. I personally like them quite a bit, and I did run this suppressed almost 100% of the time, so it got very hot very often, and these nice rubber covers help to protect my hands from the very heavy, very hot barrel underneath. Now, of course, this is an M-LOK rail with M-LOK on the 3, 6, and 9. No issues there. You could, of course, do 5 or 7 sides on some other rails. If you need extra space for some of those weird offset intermediate positions, this isn't going to be the rail for that. But in general, 3 sides of M-LOK is going to be more than enough for most people, again, depending on what you're doing. You do have a full-length Picatinny rail on top, which is nice. I prefer full-length Picatinny on basically everything unless you're just trying to shave as much weight as possible. Now, why is this almost excellent, since everything that I've said about the rail so far is very good? And the reason that it's almost excellent is because the lockup is kind of mediocre. Now, here in the back end, we have 4 steel bolts that thread into the aluminum handguard on the other side, and they just clamp onto the barrel nut. There is no anti-rotation system. It does have this little nut or this little bolt here that does kind of apply some pressure on the barrel nut. Now, all that really does is prevent the handguard from walking forward because it does fit into a little channel on the barrel nut. However, that's not necessarily the most robust mounting system in the world. Originally, I thought that steel bolt actually went directly into the handguard to provide a extremely solid lockup, because that would be direct contact between or direct connection between the handguard and the barrel nut. But it's really just some clamps down here on the bottom that clamp into aluminum on the back side. And again, there are just stronger, more robust lockups on the market. So the rail itself is fantastic, extremely low profile, extremely lightweight, but the lockup is kind of mediocre. Now, they say that they've done internal testing and it's done very, very little shift with laser units, so on and so forth. I did drop this. It's been dropped like 4 times at this point, and I haven't had any issues with the rail shifting or anything like that. But again, there are better lockups out there, so it's maybe just a step below what I would consider to be perfect. And honestly, I think the only thing that they would need to change is to add a dimple on the barrel nut where that set screw then goes into. I think that would be a much more confidence-inspiring lockup. Now, going back to the upper receiver is a completely basic 7075 T6 aluminum mil-spec upper receiver. Nothing special about it whatsoever. It does have a W forge mark. I'm not sure who makes it for them. It does have a tight fit with most of the lowers that I've tested it in, and it seems to be perfectly up to spec. No issues there. I believe it does have the proper M4 feed ramps in front for a little bit of enhanced feeding performance. Now, talking about the snatch, the suppressor normalized ambidextrous configurable handle, this is one of the best components on the build and something that I don't think they need to change at all. So it is, of course, ambidextrous with very large wings that are not roll pinned into place. They actually have steel bolts holding them in position, which is going to be a little bit nicer than roll pins, because roll pins can break, shear off, or come loose, but these are directly bolted into the back of the handle. Now, on top of that, in the back end, we have this giant gas port that feeds into the back of the charging handle. So, of course, as you're shooting suppressed, hopefully, as the gases flow out, they flow out away from the shooter's face, which is a little bit nicer than having all of those gases come back at you. On top of that, in the back, it has a very, very high shelf, which again fits up against the upper receiver, meaning that hopefully providing a little bit better gas seal towards the shooter's face. So in theory, it is going to be helping you a little bit with some of those extra gases coming back. Now, they could help you out even more just by tuning down the gas system a little bit to 0.068 to 0.070, somewhere in that range, and that would help you out even more. But that's not the Snatch's fault. The Snatch is doing a really good job, or as good of a job as it can do, of reducing that gas to the shooter's face. Now, on top of that, in the front of the charging handle, we have about 30% more material than a standard charging handle. It is much thicker up here, meaning that if you ever have to mortar the gun, ever have to use it very, very aggressively or over a long period of time, it is hopefully going to hold up very well, because it is, again, reinforced and going to be much stronger than your standing charging handle, which is a good thing. And again, it adds maybe like 0.1 ounces to the front of the charging handle. Not a big deal. So again, as far as charging handles go, I think it is fantastic. Really nothing to change or update about it, and it works very well. Now, getting into the last 2 components that we need to talk about, that is going to be their flash hider / suppressor mount. Very interestingly, on their website, I don't believe their upper receivers come with muzzle devices. You have to purchase them separately. So I think the base price was like $12.49. And then if you add somewhere between like $80 and $120 for your muzzle device, then you're up $1,300+ plus, not including shipping and taxes. that's a little strange for an upper receiver that's this expensive, especially for a company that's known for its suppressors. You think that they would include a suppressor mount so that you would buy one of their suppressors and get into their system. But again, that's a choice that they decided to make. Now, as far as a flash hider goes, this is a 3-prong flash hider, which I did use some just unsuppressed shooting just to see how it would run. Again, it was very smooth without a suppressor on it. No issues in that regard whatsoever. It does have a little bit of pinging noise, though not as bad as some other muzzle devices on the market. They are a little bit shorter and thicker than some other 3-prongs, so it does a really good job of flash elimination on an 11.5, and it's not too annoying to boot. Now, the main selling point of this flash hider is not just the fact that it is, of course, a flash hider, but also a suppressor mount. Now, this is one of their dual lock systems, so you have a taper, you have Acme threads, and then you have the kind of lock ring. Now, to be very clear, they're very, very intent on this. There is no ratcheting system. There is no real metal on metal contact other than the taper itself. That is what's doing the majority of the work. Tapers do work very well. Almost all of my suppressors and muzzle devices are taper mounts, as they are incredibly simple and they tend to work very well. Now, the way that it works with their adapter here, which you can tell is a little bit on the big and heavy side because it does have a lot going on with their dual lock system. This is not designed to be as small and lightweight as possible. This is designed to be as strong, durable, and have a minimal point of impact shift. So the way that it works is you, of course, have your Acme threads that will then thread the adapter onto the taper. Once it is on, you then have this lock ring, which is currently in the neutral position. And then I believe on this setup, you need to go to the right and it fits down. Now you have teeth on the back of the adapter that then fit into the lock ring on the muzzle device so that it cannot move left or right. So it will never be able to unscrew itself unless you physically lift the lock ring, put it in the neutral position, and then you can thread it off. So again, you get a very tight lockup on the taper, a very good gas seal. You can definitely tell that probably 99% of the gases are trapped in front, so you have a good seal on the taper. And then, of course, the lock ring is physically holding it in place with steel on steel contact so that it absolutely cannot loosen on you. It is a little bit more annoying to get on and off, especially if you have a lot of junk in front, but basically you put it into the neutral position. You can go down left or right, but just depending on how your specific adapter and your specific mount interfaces, sometimes the right will work better than the left. So again, on this specific adapter, it works better if I go the other way. And again, it is just a little bit annoying sometimes to get it on or off. That's not what they're concerned about. They're concerned with making the most rock-solid mounting system platform. The trade-off there is, of course, that the muzzle devices are a little bit bigger, heavier, more complex, and the adapter is also, again, it adds almost an inch and probably somewhere between 3.5, 5 ounces, something like that. I'll probably annotate the exact weight of the adapter here. So it is a little bit bigger and heavier than some other systems on the market, but again, they're going for that ultimate durability. And again, the Mark 1 was suppressed about 99% of the time with the YHM Turbo K, which is a very mediocre can, but it does the suppressor thing okay. Now, when we talk about reliability, as far as I'm concerned, it was 100% reliable. There was a couple failures to extract with an ammunition that had failures to extract in other guns. The extractor on the BCG is actually very strong. They're using a, I believe, Vuitton O-ring plus insert, which gives you a very, very strong extraction force. And the ammunition, I believe it was ADI L2A1, it had extraction issues in like 4 other guns. So I believe it was either once or twice that it happened in this gun, over 900 rounds of that ammunition. And I can't really fault this specific gun for it if it was happening in the other guns as well, as I believe it was just a crappy batch of ammunition. Everything else was perfectly flawless, feeding, cycling, extracting, no issues whatsoever. When we get to performance in general and shootability, we've kind of talked about it, but with that .072 gas port size, it is a little bit on the punchy side. There is definitely a little bit more gas than it absolutely needs to cycle, meaning that you get a system that is not really suppressor optimized. If it was suppressor optimized, it would probably be about 5,000 smaller on the gas port size, if not a little bit more than that for true suppressor only optimization. However, in a general purpose role, it's perfectly fine. .072 does work. Again, it's fairly soft shooting when unsuppressed. The only problem that I have with it is that they say explicitly on their website that it's suppressor optimized, which it's really not unless you're using like a flow-through suppressor, but that's probably not what they meant by suppressor optimized gas port size. Now, getting into the accuracy on the system, now keep in mind that I have talked a lot of crap about the barrel, but the barrel is extremely high quality. It has all the features that you would want. It has a lot of things going for it: true bore, optimized thread, so on and so forth. 5R rifling, 416R, crucible alloy, stainless steel, nitride finish, everything going on for it that should allow it to be as accurate as possible. So are we getting that extreme level of precision that we should be out of a 11.5 of this level of quality? And the answer is mostly yes. Now, a couple caveats to start it off with. The day that I was out shooting doing the accuracy testing with this, I did not have the suppressor on, as the YHM Turbo K, as I mentioned, is a mediocre suppressor, so I do not want that to be affecting accuracy. So it was just their muzzle device as it was installed from the factory. The ammunition that I had with me was 55 grain Callaway Ballistics. They're a sponsor of the channel. Go ahead and use code FOCUS. That can save you some money. I also had some ADI 69 grain CR Match King and some Federal Premium 69 grain CR Match King. Now, a couple caveats here is that the day I was out shooting, I was in the grasslands, the Pierre grasslands in South Dakota, with extreme winds. So even though I had a very nice Japanese scope on here for the accuracy testing, I believe it was the Blackhound 2-12, I only set the target at 50 yards, even at 50 yards with about 40, 50, 60 pounds of steel plates on the bottom of the target. The target itself was moving around quite a bit in the 20+ mile-an-hour winds that I was having that day. And again, I didn't want to back it up to like 100 yards. Then you get a little bit of variation with the wind and the targets moving around. So with those caveats out of the way, at 50 yards, I was able to do right at 1 MOA with 55 grain Callaway Ballistics Rayman, which I've done that group a couple times now. So that's kind of what I expect out of this heavy barrel, is around 1 MOA with ball. That's fantastic. With the 69 grain Federal Premium, I believe I did about 1.5 MOA, which is still perfectly fine for a gas gun. 1.5 MOA and under is really what I'm looking for. And with the 69 grain ADI Sierra Match King, that one there came in just over 1 MOA. So actually the best group that I got on that day was with the 55 grain ball. Again, that ammo, for whatever reason, in this specific barrel has been doing about 1 to 1.5 MOA consistently. I have taken this upper receiver out to 400 yards, which I think is kind of the use case for it, 0 to 400 yards. You could, of course, stretch it further if you wanted, but the accuracy that I was getting out of it was very, very consistent, 1 to 1.5 MOA. Now, the problem with that isn't with the barrel itself. That's good. That's what I would really want out of a 11.5 heavy barrel. Now, if it got even better accuracy than that, then I would be ecstatic. The problem is that I've gotten that same level of accuracy out of much cheaper, much lighter barrels, and if I wanted to compare it to something in the price range, a Geisley 11.5 taper profile, which I believe is 4 ounces lighter, cold hammer forged, chrome lined, same price. I've gotten very similar levels of accuracy out of a much lighter, much more durable profile barrel. So is it worth the trade-off of barrel life? Is it worth the trade-off in weight? I personally have to say no. And that's not to say that it's not a high quality barrel, that it's not performing as it should, but when we compare it with other things and then we compare and contrast value, durability, weight, all of those sorts of things, the HEDP barrel system starts to make a little bit less sense. Now, if you are just extremely worried about POI shift with suppressor on versus off, or like extremely long strings of fire where that heavy profile barrel can really come into play, maybe that's an advantage for you personally. For most people, though, in a more general purpose application, maybe only a few hundred rounds at a time, I think a lighter profile barrel with a better, more durable barrel steel, and you're still going to be getting a comparable level of accuracy, at least in a high quality barrel, I think that's going to make more sense to most people. So what we have here at the end of the day is a very high quality upper receiver that's doing a lot of things right, but it is just a little bit behind some of the other competition in this price category. Again, I'm going to compare it to the Geisley, but the Geisley has a more durable, similarly accurate barrel that is also lighter. The handguards have better lockups on Geisley. I know they've had some issues in the past, but most of their new rails are pretty fantastic. You can get a Super Duty for the low $1,100, $1,200 price range, which again is the same thing as this, that actually comes with a muzzle device. Their charging handles are very good. Their upper receiver handguard lockup is better. Their BCGs, the RE BCG in a Geisley, is one of the best BCGs on the market, not just kind of a basic mil-spec-ish BCG. So, as far as value goes, it is eclipsed by some of its competition. There's really no other way to say that. There are some people who this might make a lot of sense for. Again, if you're looking for premium accuracy, which again is similar to other upper receivers in the price category, you're looking for reduced POI, you just really like Griffin Armament in general, then I think that that can make some sense for you. However, again, for most people, there are better options on the market in its own price category, and there are also probably, better options that are a little bit cheaper as well, BCM, others that you can probably name in the comments down below. But with all that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think of the Griffin Armament Mark 1 in the comments down below. And with all that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.